Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert, and this is the weekly live stream where we talk about everything business and entrepreneur related. So that includes side hustles, which are a great way for ordinary people to step into this wonderful world. Special thanks to my channel members and my Patreons and and my super thanks donors. You guys are awesome. And also to everybody who is joining me today and participating. We are going to be taking questions later, so get in the chat and let me know what you're wondering and struggling with, and I will attempt to help you out. The title of this episode of Side Hustle Ideas is How to Be an Entrepreneur, so we're going to be talking about that. But first, we're going to be briefly talking about how to do a SWOT analysis. You might have heard of this. We're going to get into that. And we're going to be covering both of those topics and then taking some questions. Welcome to Ahmed, the latest channel member. So thank you very much, Ahmed. You are awesome. I hope you guys like what I've been doing with the thumbnails on the live stream so far. I've been stripping them down a little, changing the, I don't know if you want to say the branding, but changing the look of the thumbnails. Anyway, I kept the name of the live streams like Side Hustle Ideas. I could change that. So if you would prefer I use a different name for this series, let me know. I could go from Side Hustle Ideas to There Goes the Sofa. How about that? Everyone would know exactly what that live stream is about just by the name. Okay, let's get into this. I see there are 16 people here. You guys are awesome. Okay, we're going to talk about something that you hear a lot about when you take a business course or you study business in school. But in my experience, you don't really see this in the real world that often. It's the SWOT analysis. And as always, I'm going to try and demonstrate this visually here. So I'm just going to try and pull up a web browser and we can go on this journey together, you and me. And I like to start a lot of my image searches, as always, with Bing instead of Google, because for certain specific things, I think Bing does a slightly better job, at least at the moment, than Google does right now. So let's do this together here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. SWOT analysis, S-W-O-T. There you go. SWOT analysis. So I don't know if we can filter this just for big images, large. Okay, let's just step through this. If you've never heard of this, this is something that people always talk about. They always talk about, it's usually like chapter 1, paragraph 1 of learning business for some reason. And the only time I have actually seen this in the real world is dealing with entrepreneurial type stuff. So it's called a SWOT analysis, S-W-O-T, and it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, and where I've seen this used out actually in the real world is in entrepreneurship, where they're trying to evaluate the viability of a new business idea, okay, a proposal for a new business venture. Okay, so they use this as the very first step in determining if this is a viable idea, okay? So the idea obviously is that you're looking at good things and bad things, right? Good things are strengths and opportunities, and bad things are weaknesses and threats. Pretty straightforward, right? And by the way, this picture here is just a placeholder. Obviously, it's got a bunch of gibberish written in the boxes here, okay? Here's another one. So strengths and weaknesses, so good things and bad things. So good things are strengths and opportunities. Weaknesses are, or bad things are weaknesses and threats. Man, Monday mornings. However, what it's actually doing here is you're looking internally and you're also looking externally. Okay, it's very important not to just analyze something by looking inward, especially when you're dealing with business. You've got to look outward, and we're going to be coming back to that later. So the SWOT analysis, it forces you to look inward. That's strengths and weaknesses. Okay, that's to do with what you're going to do. But it also forces you to look outside. Okay, opportunities and threats. These have nothing really to do with you. These are about the outside world. Okay, So the idea is that if you're proposing to launch a product or provide a service that does a certain thing, okay, and you're trying to decide whether this is something you should do, you're going to be actively thinking about each of these 4 areas. So you're going to be looking inward to your strengths and weaknesses. Strengths would be what kind of strategic advantage you might have or special ability that separates you from other potential competitors. Weaknesses are things that are to do with you specifically. Where are your weaknesses? Maybe you lack knowledge in a certain area, or you don't have access to markets or volume discounts, or certain licenses or certain things like that, right? Now, opportunities, that's different from strengths. That's something where you're looking outside. So, for example, in the next year, you might know that some other company is launching some platform which is going to be really big. There's a lot of buzz around it. So that could be an opportunity for you to jump on that and take advantage of some synergy there or some momentum, right? Threats, that's something, once again, you're looking outside of yourself to the business environment. Maybe there's an economic downturn that's in the process. Maybe there's a rival technology that's just been launched by a competitor. Things of that nature, right? So this is what a SWOT analysis does. It forces you to kind of actively think of each of these 4 areas. Now, beyond this, it's pretty much down to a brainstorming session. That's been my experience. I don't know if there's any more to this. I've never heard about any extra level of sophistication or any extra steps after this point. In anywhere that it's been taught in textbooks, I've looked it up on the internet, I've talked to people about it, and that seems to be it as far as I'm aware. Now, like a lot of flavor of the month management trends that are always happening, they're fads, they're here today, they're gone tomorrow. What this has in common is that it's basically a way to pre-package a brainstorming session. You can call it different names and you can have a big fancy process, but at the end of the day, when you look at what needs to be done, the moment of original thought, the moment of creativity, the moment of genius, it just boils down to a brainstorming session. And that's why a lot of these management fads, management speak, management jargon, that's why they don't tend to last. This one has lasted. It's been around since the 1960s and it doesn't go away, which is puzzling to me because you always hear about it in school, but you never really see it in the real world. At least that's been my experience. I know that some people out there supposedly, allegedly use SWOT analyses as part of their day-to-day, grind. Maybe you work in private equity or something like that. I'm not sure. But that's a SWOT analysis. So if you've never heard of this, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because where I have heard of this, like I said, has been in entrepreneurial circles where people are pitching ideas. They put together a pitch deck. They present in business schools. They present out in the real world to potential investors. And usually one of the things they do as part of their pitch is they have a very brief, cursory SWOT analysis, and they say these are the major points, right? So it's maybe a good summary or a good way of summarizing, everything relevant about the business in one slide, in one paragraph, something like that. So that's why I've seen this. So if you are evaluating a business idea for a possible side hustle or a possible entrepreneurial venture, this can be a place to start. I mean, it's just a way of thinking. And the only real thing I think it adds is that it forces you to actively think, certainly not just about yourself, but about what's going on in the larger market that could be good or could be bad. It forces you to actively think of these things, which you may not do unless you're forced or compelled to do it. So there you go. Mark Thomas is here. Good morning, Mark. And VV is here. Hello to VV. So there you go. that's a SWOT analysis. If you want to learn more about this, obviously you can learn about business, and they'll usually start with that. It's usually the first lesson for some reason. I don't know why, but there you go. And yes, if you take my MBA course, that's covered in there along with a million other things. Okay, let's get to the main topic today. Hopefully that's why everybody's here. The title of this is How to Be an Entrepreneur. We're going to talk about that. Hopefully everybody here, presumably, you have an interest in entrepreneurship. That's why you're here. And, it's interesting because I've talked to a lot of people in business schools about this kind of thing. And I get a lot of students that are attracted to the idea of entrepreneurship because, number one, you can make a lot of money if you do it right. And number two, you don't have to play by somebody else's rules. You can do it your way. It's a very creative endeavor, right? I would put forward that this is just as creative as being some kind of artist, whether you make music or you write novels or anything like that. I mean, this is the same type of idea. To be very good at this type of thing, you need to have a definite element of creativity, because if you can't think of original thoughts, your success is going to be very limited, put it that way. Okay. So what I've tried to do here is I've tried to list some points. And how many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 8. 8 points. I'm going to give you 8 points that I think, in my experience, have been pretty much essential to being a successful entrepreneur. And I'm coming from a place where I've taught this in school. I'm coming from a place of having been an entrepreneur and having run a company. I'm coming from a place of having advised and assisted other startup founders and entrepreneurs and small business owners with their ventures. And these keep coming up again and again and again. Okay. So if you're just starting out, I would try and internalize these. And if you have any questions about these, don't hesitate to get in the chat. And if you need more clarification or what I said doesn't really make sense to you, let me know and I can try and clarify. Okay, so the first point I'd like to make is a common fallacy that a lot of people are under the false impression of is that you need money to be an entrepreneur. You need to spend vast amounts of money to get started, almost like you're an investor or a venture capitalist. And I want to dispel this myth right now, okay? That is absolutely false. And if you need an obvious example of that, look at the platform that we're on, YouTube, right? When you think of famous YouTubers, Mr. Beast, PewDiePie, whoever comes to mind, did those people start with the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars to blow on starting their YouTube channel? Of course not. You can start a YouTube channel for free. You then invest your time and effort into doing it, right? But one thing you don't need at the outset is tons of cash, okay? And this is the situation of entrepreneurs across the board, okay? Now, I think the problem is a lot of people, when they think of entrepreneurship, they think of like working for themselves and going into business for themselves. They're thinking of like an archaic sort of stereotype where you would come in and buy a business, or you would come in and you would start a business by buying a building, buying some real estate so you have an office or leasing it, whatever, having some kind of physical presence, like a storefront or something like that. Like, for example, you want to bake cookies and do that as, your entrepreneurial venture. You might be stuck in this idea that, okay, first of all, I need to get a bakery. And then I need to hire a staff of employees to operate my bakery. And then I need to hire more employees to do the customer service and the sales and the deliveries, right? And buying lots of inventory, like ingredients and this kind of thing. And, so the way that works is they think I need to spend money on this on day one. Before I make any sales, I have to buy a bakery, hire 20 people, spend lots of money on equipment and inventory. The answer is completely false. That's an archaic way of doing things. Doesn't mean you can't do it. A lot of people do it that way, but my point is that you don't need to do that. And in fact, it's actually a bad idea to try and start a bakery business in that way. Okay? There are maybe easier business ideas that you can get off the ground a lot quicker, a lot simpler, a lot, cheaper. Or if you have your heart set on selling baked goods, there are alternative ways to start that business up rather than spending all that money in the initial step. That's called having a high capital outlay. That's the technical jargon. Basically, it means spending a bunch of money right off the hop. Okay? So the point is, you don't need to do that. And in fact, if anyone came to me and said, what do you think of this idea to do this? I would say, that's a bad idea. That might be fine for an established grocery chain if they want to set up a new bakery unit. Oh yeah, definitely. Fair enough. They've got a lot of capital to do this. They got a lot of talent, a lot of people. Sure. But for an entrepreneur, especially an entrepreneur that's never been in the bakery business before, terrible idea. Because in a nutshell, if there's anything wrong with your theory, like you guessed wrong on any little part of this plan, you spend all that money, you don't produce the desired result, you then, if you borrowed the money, you then can't pay it back, and the whole thing fails. You don't make any sales, right? So unless you really get a hole in one just with guesswork, it won't work out. So that's the reason I recommend that. So you don't need a lot of money. There's a lot of very cheap ways that cost either zero or close to zero, where you can reach a lot of people, you can learn about doing the thing that you're doing, okay? And you can get a business off the ground without spending a lot of money. So the first thing you need to do, in summary, is dispel this notion that you need a ton of cash, an initial capital outlay to become an entrepreneur. You don't. Okay? And you can look at examples like YouTube to confirm that. It doesn't mean that certain businesses don't cost a lot of money, but what it means is that you don't need to do those businesses, or you don't need to do them in the traditional way to start those businesses. Okay, so that's my first point. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. And EVB says, right on. And hello to Bad Shoe. Okay, let's talk about the the mentality. Now, God, I have a throat issue today. That's okay, because I'm wearing a new shirt, so it all works out. Let's talk about the mentality, or as people say today, the mindset of being an entrepreneur. What's it all about? What do you need to focus on? How should you be thinking? Okay. Entrepreneurship is all about being tuned in to what people want and what people need. It's about people and what they need and what they want. It's not really about you. It's funny because when you think of entrepreneurship, you might think of people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, people like this. You think like, okay, that introverted technical person working alone in a room for months to create something, almost like an inventor, right? And that's kind of the stereotype. Those are wild exceptions to the rule. Okay, usually what happens is people who focus inward, it's what I want to do, what I think is a good idea, what I can do, my skills. It's all looking inward. Usually that doesn't end in success because you create something wonderful to you. The problem is that entrepreneurship is about making money, which means selling things, which means you have to turn other people onto it. How many times throughout history have people has a genius created something or discovered something, only to find that when they tell the world and they're expecting everyone to go, wow, that's amazing, I can see how that's awesome. when they say that, or when they do that, they're met with a resounding no, or they're met with a resounding lack of interest or confusion. What I think is fascinating is looking up famous inventions. You know, somebody invented the telegraph, somebody invented the telephone, somebody invented the motor car. And in each of these, the person that sort of invented it and showed it off to everyone, they were expecting everyone to go, wow, that's amazing. This is going to revolutionize everything. And instead, they were met with, who cares? Who would want that? I certainly don't. What's the big deal? You know, it's mind-boggling when you go back and you look at specific inventions, things that we think in our world are absolutely essential, and you look at the creation story of that and how it was shown off, and most of the time, nobody gave a rat's ass about it. You know, why would that be any good? I can send messages over great distance. I could communicate with the next town instantly. And the resounding consensus of opinion was, why would anyone want that? You know? So this is the problem, okay, with looking inward, right? It's good to look inward. It's good to know yourself and have talent. But entrepreneurship is about selling something. And in order for that, you need to have it appeal to other people, right? Okay, so the mentality of entrepreneurship, here, I accidentally deleted my notes there. Here, I got it back. Okay, is being tuned into what people want, what people need. It's about making something popular. That's what it's about. It's about making something popular. Introverts have a natural disadvantage of doing this. Doesn't mean they can't do it. I'm an introvert. I'm a big introvert. But you need to step out of yourself and need to focus on the reaction and the attitudes of people, right? Because the general rule is that if something is popular, then money and prosperity follows, right? So making something popular. Now, this can be within a very, very niche market. So it could be trying to make something popular with a very, very select small group of people, but it's still about making something popular, right? You know, I don't know. You want to go to a limited market. I don't want to pick on anybody, but limited market. I don't know, bird watchers. Let's say bird watchers. Some people are into bird watching as a hobby. Great, you know. I don't think that's like a really tiny group. I think there's a lot of bird watchers in the world, but like maybe a subset of bird watchers, maybe the type of people that will fly around the world because they heard that they can observe a certain species of rare bird in the wild, and they just have to go there. They're going to spend a lot of their money just to do this, right? Marriages are broken up because, you know, one spouse says, I need you here at, you know, our anniversary or something. And the other spouse says, no, I need to go around the world and look at the spotted egret or something, you know. So, you know what I'm saying? Like maybe a very, very small community, very small market, right? So maybe you're just targeting bird watchers that are like hardcore, okay? But it's still a matter of making something popular within that very select group of people, that community. That's what entrepreneurship is about, really, at its core. Okay? It's not the same thing as doing a research project. It's not the same thing as inventing something or, you know, pushing the boundaries of engineering or technology or, you know, process. That's not the same thing. That's a technical endeavor. Entrepreneurship is taking that and using it to make money. Only then is it successful. Okay? So it's that mentality that would-be entrepreneurs need. And I've told a lot of students this, you know, it's like you have to be tuned into that. You can't just be like an engineer in disguise as a business person. You have to be someone who cares about making something popular. Anyway, Bad Shoe says most niches are already have competition. How to best differentiate yourself and how to prevent competitors from stealing your idea. Well, look. Okay, first of all, that's a very general question. I have no idea what business you're even in when you ask this. But what you can be sure of is that No one will want to steal your idea if your idea hasn't proven itself yet, right? I've met a lot of people that are in the sort of startup phase of being an entrepreneur, and they're not revenue positive, which means that they haven't made money yet, but they're absolutely obsessed with keeping everything they do totally secret, almost to the point of paranoia, almost to the point where, like, you know, as their advisor, they won't even reveal to me the technicalities of, you know, their patent or their invention, of, you know, they if they're keeping it a trade secret. The thing is, nobody cares. Nobody cares. I mean, how do you know that's a good idea? You don't. Has it made any money? How much money has it made? Well, zero. Okay. How long have you been working at it? A couple years, and it still made zero. Okay. Well, how do you know that that's a good idea? Nobody's going to go out of their way to like steal your idea when it's worth zero. You know what I'm saying? I understand that you feel passionately about it and you think that it's, you know, this thing that should be closely guarded as a trade secret, you know, on penalty of death. But that is not shared by anyone other than yourself. You know, at least I've never, ever seen anyone do that, you know, and a lot of examples of that. Okay. So don't worry about stealing your idea. Worry about proving that your idea is actually worth something. Let's prove that it's actually worth the paper it's printed on. Then you can worry about guarding it. You know, once you've made your first million from it and you have overwhelming evidence that this is something that's valuable, then you can worry about protecting it, okay? But people that stymie their progress because they're absolutely paranoid and they have to keep everything secret and they go to great lengths to do that, is not the way to go. Okay, so I've covered 2 points for how to become an entrepreneur, okay? Let's move on to the third. The third is an extension of the thing I just said, okay? It's about making something popular. That means that as an entrepreneur, you have to immerse yourself in people, in your potential customers. You have to care about what they're thinking about, what they're paying attention to, how they feel about certain things. Are they receptive to different ideas, you know? Take the construction industry, for example. Now, in the last 30 years, I've witnessed many, many companies come out with new products, you know, like, for example, how do they, where I am in North America, they build houses with asphalt shingles. Okay, that's usually the default roofing system for a lot of houses and things is asphalt shingles, right? Or asphalt, depending on how you say it. I have seen so many companies come out with so many alternate products, and their goal is to replace asphalt shingles. Okay, they either come out with something cheaper, or they come out with something more durable, or they come out with something that's more environmentally friendly, or they come out with something that you know, is more eco-friendly, more green, like green roofs and things. And you know, a lot of these products, they make a very good pitch. They offer all kinds of advantages. And you look at the North American housing market, you look at all the houses that are being built in North America. What are they using today? Asphalt shingles. They haven't moved. And on the surface, you might be wondering, like, well, why is that? Asphalt shingles, they're not super environmentally friendly. They're not super high quality. You know, there's a lot of issues with them. They're difficult to install, blah, 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 blah. But none of the alternatives that are much higher tech have ever caught on. And you've got to examine that. Now, if you're an engineer and you're sort of analyzing, okay, like this product, this ancient arcane product, asphalt shingles, can we do better? It's a no-brainer. Of course you could do better. You could use steel. You could use all kinds of other materials. You could use sod and grass and have a green roof. You could use roll roofing. There's so many efficiencies you could get by changing this. But you have to ask yourself the question, well, if it's so obvious that there's so many things that you could do to improve this. Why aren't they being implemented? It's not because people haven't tried. It's because the people that install roofing and the consumers who buy the houses just don't want it. Because yes, it might be more efficient, but it's more expensive. Or it might be more green friendly, but it's much more difficult to install. Or it might be more environmentally friendly, or the installation goes a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently, but it doesn't last as long. There's always an issue with it. So it's not about what you can do yourself. It's about what people will go for, how they think. And that shows you the core of entrepreneurship. If you want to start a venture that's going to come out with something that will catch on, you have to understand how your potential customers think. You have to go hang out with them. You have to understand where they're coming from. Go spend some time with a roofing company. See what they do all day. And then when you see things, which you will, that don't make any sense to you, you have to kind of investigate. Don't do what a lot of people do, is they just conclude, these people are stupid, and they dismiss it. Wrong. You've got to understand why they're doing what they're doing, because they're doing it for a reason. They're not interested in this and they're not interested in that. Why is that? Well, as it turns out, 10 years ago, they tried that type of product or that type of approach, and they ran into these problems, and then the customers had this reaction, and it meant they had to retool and retrain people, and they ran into these issues. So you need to learn all of that. You need to understand where they're coming from, and that's what entrepreneurs do. They don't just spend all their time alone in a room with themselves creating something. They go out and they get answers to these questions. And once they really understand that kind of stuff, they incorporate all that into what they do. And then you actually stand a chance of success. Okay? So entrepreneurship is all about going out and connecting with people and understanding what their needs are, what their wants are, how they're thinking, what they're receptive to, what their attitudes are, what the history has been with them and that product or service, or that type of product or service. You have to immerse yourself in people. Okay? Now, introverts can do this if you're an introvert. This is, it might seem like bad news on, off the cuff, but it's not. You can do this. It's really not that hard. And a lot of introverts are great at this because they're very methodical and systematic. And that can be an advantage in this kind of thing. Okay. So that leads me to my fourth point, which is if you want to be an entrepreneur, a great way of doing it is to go to the center of whatever industry you're in. Okay? So let's say you want to be, something to do with the construction industry. You would go and immerse yourself in that industry. You would go to the trade shows. You would go to and meet all the players in, maybe your city or something. All the construction companies. You go and you talk to. You might get a job, or you might volunteer, or you might do something where you're on the inside of those businesses. Talk to real estate agents, talk to the builders, talk to the developers, talk to all the people in the sort of ecosystem or the supply chain, and see what they're doing and learn about it. Okay? And as you do that, opportunities will open up before you. Okay? Instead of staying outside of it in your home, far removed from where all the action is going, go right into it. Okay? That's what you need to do. For certain industries that are concentrated in certain geographic locations, it might mean you might have to move, or you might have to go to where the action is happening. If you're in the fashion industry, it might mean you have to go to Paris or New York or something like that. But if you're stuck out in Cleveland or, I use Cleveland as the stereotype of a place that's kind of far removed from where the action is happening. I'm sure that's not true for for certain industries, but certainly for fashion, that's my impression. No offense to anyone who lives in Cleveland. You guys are awesome. I was stuck in Cleveland for 3 days on a business trip a few years ago, and I had to get to grips with that town or that city. Anyway, but I digress. So you got to be on the center of what whatever industry you're in. Now, if that even involves getting a job or something for 6 months to get on the inside of a company that's a big player in that business, that can make sense. You get on the inside, you see everything they do, you can talk to everyone, you can make connections with everyone, you have the opportunity to ask why when you see things that aren't obvious why they're doing it that way. You get to ask why, figure it out, and people will give you answers, right? So that's a big point. You got to get onto the inside of whatever industry it is. Don't try and do it from the outside, because everything you learn, you'll be learning the hard way, and it's just unnecessarily tough when you do it like that. Try and do that. That was point 4. Point 5. You guys are going to love this. I just know it. Think cheap. You have to think cheap. I have seen so many people blow so much money on stupid things, like when they're not making money, when they're not revenue positive. You know, they get loans, they get grants, they get investment, and they spend it on building fancy offices with, you know, the equivalent of granite countertops, like a high-powered lawyer's office, you know, totally unnecessary. Not to mention having office space to begin with. You might not need it, you know, or a storefront type affair. You might not need that. People spending their money on websites, you know, before they've even made any money, before they've even talked to a potential customer. I've seen people blow $100,000, $200,000 on websites, business cards, all kinds of things that are window dressing. You got to think cheap. A great way to think is whenever you're confronted with an expense, like a cost, I need to pay for this. Instead of just thinking, how can I pay for that? Instead, think, how can I eliminate the need for having to pay for that? Instead of buying something, maybe you could rent it. Instead of renting it, maybe you could borrow it. If you ask some people who run some place nicely, maybe they'll let you come in for free after hours and use the equipment, you know, whatever, right? Think cheap. And the great thing about not spending a lot of money is that if you then make a little bit of money, it's all profit, right? You know, just to digress for a second, let's talk about movies as an example of this. I'm not a big movie expert, but something I've kind of sort of observed is that certainly in the last few years, Hollywood especially, they like to make these movies that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The problem with that is that you've got to make hundreds of millions of dollars to even break even, right? So you make a movie and it generates $500 million at the box office. Now, anyone would think, oh, wow, that's a tremendous success. It turns out it's a failure because they spent nearly, I don't know, $750 million to make the movie, total cost, but they only made half, like $500,000 or $500 million, you know, revenue from the movie. So it's a flop. It's a failure. They made a loss. They lost $250 million on that movie. You know, wouldn't it be great if you could have made that movie for $5 million? Something that they did, like I remember a guy, I don't know that much about him, so I don't want to kind of say things that aren't true, but there was a guy called Roger Corman, I think, or Corman, Roger Corman. He made all these really cheap movies. He was an executive producer, and he was the movie equivalent of a venture capitalist, where what he did is, instead of taking $50 million and making one movie, he would take $50 million and make 50 movies. And what he would do is he would behave like a venture capitalist. He would control the finances, and then he would control the HR. He would say, okay, I'm going to hire you to direct this movie and you to produce it. I'm going to hire you to direct and produce this other movie. I'm going to hire you, you know, kid out of school to do the special effects for it, whatever. And you'd make 50 movies, each of them that cost $1 million or something. And these movies would not be great. They would not be high art. They would not be masterpieces, and they would not be box office, great successes. But they would all be profitable, because each of those movies, on average, they might make 3 or 4 million. That's not a lot. But 3 or 4 million on a $1 million budget or a $500,000 budget is awesome. And so this guy generated so much money by making these not so great movies. So, a couple of them were really good, but a lot of them were, and then a few of them were absolutely terrible. It's laughable, right? But it was a great model. It's the exact opposite of what Hollywood is doing today, as far as I can tell. And the great thing about making 50 movies is that you can then afford to take chances. That's the other thing about like venture capital, because you're making so many investments and each one is really small, they're all high risk. You can afford to like take chances on really crazy ideas. And every once in a while, some of those crazy ideas really work. And as you do this stuff, you learn more and more and more about the audience and what they might like. So there's a lot of advantages. Okay. So think cheap, right? Because, don't be the people that made like $10 million and are crying because they lost $200 million. Be the people that made $10 million and are laughing because it only cost them $100,000 to make $10 million, right? That would be the better situation to be in. Anything you can do that's cheaper is good in the beginning. And anything you can do that's faster to test something that you can do is always good in the beginning. Later on, once you know that your idea is good and you're making money, then you can work on the quality, then you can work on doing it properly. But in the beginning, to test it, right, to get yourself established, cheap, quick, those are good things. That's how you have to think. Okay, I see I got 24 people here live. Thank you. You guys are awesome. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. If I'm not explaining something adequately or you have more questions, get in the chat and let me know. Okay, so we've covered, I think that's 6 points. Is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? 5 points so far of the 8 of how to become an entrepreneur. Let's move on to number 6. Okay, so this is once again an extension of what I already said. Okay. Entrepreneurship is all about making money. That's what it is. That's what being in business is. It's about making money. It's not about wearing a suit. It's not about having an office. It's not about having a business card or a company name or employees. Those are not what being in business is about. Those things are the illusion of being in business. What being in business is about is making money. So, you might not look very professional. You might not have a ton of employees. You might not have a fancy office. You might not have a cutting edge website or whatever, you look as a status symbol. But you're making money hand over fist. That's someone who's in business and they're doing what they should be doing. I've seen a lot of people that can spend money. Oh, sure, any fool can spend money. You're given money and they can spread it around. They can go and they buy the suit. They can go and they get their office renovated, or they buy real estate, or they lease real estate, or they buy equipment, or they hire people, and they feel really good. They feel like, oh yeah, now things are happening for me. But they haven't sold a single unit of whatever it is that they're offering. They haven't even created the final production version of whatever it is that they're offering. And now they're deeply in debt. That's not being in business. That's the illusion of being in business. They are in exactly the same place as they were when it was just them, alone in their home, dreaming up the idea, not knowing if it's going to work. They are no further ahead in any real sense. All they've done is they've spent a lot of money, but they still have the same problem that confronts them. And that is, I've got to figure out what I can offer that people will buy, that people will pay for, and I will be able to make a profit. They still haven't cracked that nut. They still haven't solved that problem, right? So being an entrepreneur is about making money. It's not about developing new technology or a new product or a new service. It's not about acting businesslike and having a LinkedIn profile and a website. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. It's about the act of making money. And only when you can actually make money are you in business. I would much rather hire or invest in somebody who has sold 10 units of a product they created in their own home by hand themselves, and they sold it for more than their total cost of those 10 units. I'd much rather invest in them than someone who has hired 100 people, leased a building, renovated their office, got a fleet of vehicles, is talking with everyone, going to trade shows, flying all over the world, but they haven't launched their product or sold a single unit of it. Okay? So if you're going to solve this problem, wouldn't it be better to solve it when you're not deeply in debt, the pressure isn't on, you have all the time in the world, and you're unencumbered by all these other distractions? Right? That's what entrepreneurship is all about. It's about making money. Okay, it's not a research project, and it's not pretending to be in business. It's about making money. Okay, that's point number 6 or whatever number I was at here. I haven't numbered these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's 6. Okay, 2 last points very quickly. Number 7, you want to be an entrepreneur? Get some experience. And what I mean is try something. We've already established that you don't need any money. We've already established that it's all about people. So get out and start probing the market. What that means is start interacting with people, start offering something. If there's a congregation of people, a group of people, real or virtual, if you did the equivalent of putting up your hand and saying, hey, is anyone interested in this? I got this, or I could have this, and it costs this much. Any takers? Right? Maybe you get no response. Maybe it's crickets, right? That tells you something. It tells you something, either what you're offering is just not compelling to these people, or it's telling you that you're not reaching them, but it's telling you something, right? You keep trying different versions of that, and then you get a bite. You say, anybody interested in this? And you get lots of responses. People are interested. People are wanting to pay for it. Here, yeah, I'll take 2. Right? That tells you something else. Maybe if it's something that you could do if people wanted, right? Try it. Try produce it and see if you can sell it and see if you can repeat that, right? But try things. Get experience. Get familiar with your market. Get familiar with the people in it, players, how they think, what they're looking for, what they respond to, what they don't respond to. Okay, get that experience. It may feel, and I know from experience, from a long time ago, it may feel like disheartening. It may feel like, why am I doing this? It doesn't have the prestige of putting on a suit and going to a job where, you're respected and they've given you a title and, they give you a paycheck and, it doesn't have that prestige, but you're learning so much more and so much more valuable things about the real world, the business world, right? About how to make money. You keep doing that and that will pay off, right? So get experience in the world of entrepreneurship. Try stuff. Manage your risk. Don't spend money. Do everything you can for either 0 or very close to 0, but try things. Talk to people. Pitch them ideas, right? Now, we have the internet. We have the single most useful tool for business, I think, almost ever created. You can reach millions of people if you know what you're doing, just with your phone or your computer. This is very practical to do. So get experience, right? That's point 7. And my last point is to learn business. There is something to be said for learning the theory, the concepts of business, right? Yes, I'm pushing a course, right? I created that course for this purpose, but This is not about that. This is about learning it from whatever source is appropriate for you, okay? But if you want to be in business, learn the principles of business from a book. That's learning it the easy way. It's stupid to learn that the hard way when you could have just picked up a book, right? And it says, don't do this for this reason. Instead, do this. And you're like, if I had read that a year ago, that would have saved me so much blood, sweat, and tears, right? So, learn from books and learn from real world experience. The great thing about experience is that nobody can take it away from you. Nobody can tell you you're wrong because you've done it and you've seen it, right? And that's the only way to know for sure. But it can be accompanied, it should be accompanied with some theory, right? You usually start out with a theory and then you tack on experience and you become a formidable force, because then you understand why it works or it doesn't, and it helps you predict what will work and what won't, and it gives you ideas for what are some of the things that you could try, because other people have tried it and they've had success in similar situations. So now that you know of their experiences and what they've done, you can incorporate that into what you do. Okay, so that's point number 8, is learn business to improve. So those are my 8 points. So quickly to summarize how to become an entrepreneur. Number 1, you don't need money. Get out of the mentality of thinking I need to invest tons of capital, I need to throw money around to get started. You don't. There's always a cheap, doable, alternative solution to launch anything rather than spending a ton of money. Okay? You might have to take an indirect approach depending on what business you're trying to get into, but there's always an alternative. The mentality or the mindset you need is that you need to focus on making something popular. That's what entrepreneurship is, because if you make something popular, the money follows, okay? Number 3, you have to immerse yourself in people. You have to observe people, get to know the people. Whoever is the target market you're trying to sell to, or the industry you're trying to get into, you got to learn about people and focus on the people, what they think, what their attitudes are, what they're receptive to, what they're not receptive to, etc. Okay? Number 4, think cheap. Okay? I actually goofed up the order of those. Okay? I've already said you don't need money, but get into the habit of always trying to go for a cheap solution to a problem rather than an expensive one. And as I said, think of how you can eliminate the need for something rather than thinking for how to pay for it. Okay? I think I lost my count here. The next one is entrepreneurship is all about making money. Okay, so we've talked about focusing on people and all this, but what entrepreneurship is, it's business. It's the science of making money. It's not about the illusion of being in business, where it outwardly looks like you're in business, but it's really about how to sell something successfully, at a profit. That's what it's about. That's what entrepreneurship is. It's not a research project. It's not a technical innovation venture. It's about selling something at a profit. And then get experience by trying things. Get out in the world and try things. Don't just sit alone in your home thinking about things or reading books. Go out and try things. Get hard experience at whatever it is that you're wanting to do. And then finally, learn the theory of business. If you want to be in business, it really, really helps to know how business works. And if you learn the theory, it will save you so much time and effort, because you're not having to learn things the hard way. You already know the theory. You already know how things work. Now you just have to tailor that to the very specific thing you're trying to do. Okay, so that's my summary of how to become an entrepreneur. 8 points. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go over to people in the questions. If you have any questions, if you're struggling with something or wondering something, get in the chat and I will do my best to help you out. Bad Shoe says, that's a solid point. You're awesome. Well, thank you, Bad Shoe. You're awesome too. Thank you for being here. RPT says, love this channel. I will one day enroll in your course to learn business. Well, good. Yeah. The more you know, the further you'll go. It's not just a cliched thing people say. Learning business really helps people, not just in the world of entrepreneurship, not just in the world of business. Like a lot of people that have jobs, they're not an entrepreneurship. They're not a startup founder. They're not a small business owner. They don't have any ambitions to do that. They just want a career type job, but they want to get promoted, right? Well, learning business helps you there. If you understand the perspective of the people at the top who are running the business and what they care about and why they care about it, if you get that, that will help you do the right things, pay attention to the right things, have the right priorities, and they will recognize that, generally speaking, and you will move up, right? People that don't understand any of that stuff, but are down here, what would be the incentive to put them much higher if they don't understand what really matters and why things are done the way they're done? You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of that. I've seen people that work in operations, supply chain, IT, even HR, they're just completely oblivious to how the money comes in, for example. They don't understand that. They've never seen that. The money just appears, it's given to your department, and you spend it. And they might have been working in those areas for years, and then they think, oh yeah, I could run this business. No, you can't. No, you can't. Right? So the best thing to do is to learn how things work. And as always, it's a combination of theory and experience and practice. If you could see what the owners of the business see, if you could sit in a lot of their meetings and see what they're looking at, what they care about, what they're concerned with all the time, the questions they ask, the information that they try and get, if you could see all that, that would really help, right? Cool. Well, we're not really getting a ton of questions. There's 25 people here. Thank you for joining me. You guys are awesome. For those of you who have been here before, you know that I do this live stream once a week, Side Hustle Ideas. I used to do a live stream called Leadership. I've been toying with the idea of restarting that, where we don't necessarily talk about entrepreneurship, but we talk about business in general. In particular, I think the original idea was I was drawing from my experiences as a CEO, running a business, and some of the issues that I had to deal with and some of the things I learned and, a bit about that kind of stuff. So it's not really how to get a job and it's not really how to start a company. It's kind of like in the middle, just a general sort of business discussion from the point of view of management, and leading a business successfully. So I've been toying with the idea of starting that up again. Let me know in the comments if or in the chat if you are interested in hearing that. But it doesn't look like there's much going on, so I will probably wind this down. I'm back later today, in an hour actually, with my other weekly live stream, which is how to get hired. So that's where we talk about job interviews and resumes and job applications and things like this. So if you have an interest in that stuff, join me for that. And I will basically do a Q&A and answer some questions there. Okay. So thank you very much for being here today. You guys are awesome. If you do want to learn business from me, okay, I have 2 courses that may be of use to you. This one here, which is essentially you are learning the same material that you learn in an entire MBA program in university, okay, a master's degree in business is called an MBA if you don't know. And it's usually a 2-year program. And I'm calling this a course. It's really an entire program because what you're getting is you're getting a reading list and you're getting several videos from me. And what the idea is you're going to be reading the exact same textbooks that they use in MBA programs at some of the top universities in the world, like Harvard Business School. You are reading the same material and you are learning the same ideas. And I'm helping you walk through it. And I'm sort of bringing up particular issues or what is the more important material, what's the less important material, and helping you walk through it. Now, there's no evaluations, there's no exams, there's no tests, there's no assignments. So you can do all that stuff if you wish, or if you just want a very sort of cursory skimming overview of the various topics within the study of business, you can do that too. You order the books off Amazon or any other place of your choosing, and you can get slightly older editions, so they're very cheap if you want to go that route. Instead of paying $100 for a book or $50 or whatever it is, you pay the equivalent of $5 and you get something, that's maybe 10 years old or something. But it's all the essential information is still there. It's the same information. So if you're really wanting to get the same benefit on a budget, that's why I created that particular course, the $100 MBA. So if you're interested in that, check out the link in the description. The other one that you might be interested in for this stuff is actually this one here, Write Like a Professional. That's actually probably the quickest of all the three courses I have. You could do that one the quickest. And what you do is you learn how to communicate. So if you're trying to network with people, or you're trying to interact with a lot of people you don't know, you're reaching out to companies, reaching out to individuals that can maybe help you in a certain business, okay, but you don't know what to say, you don't know how to phrase it, that's the course for you. Basically, what I did is I condensed a lot of what I had to learn to become an executive in terms of communication skills. So the difference between sort of a worker level employee and going all the way up to CEO, becoming a mid-manager and then an executive manager and then CEO, the communication skills that you have to learn along that journey is I basically tried to put that into that course. So that's what that course is. User says, thank you. User says, for that course, we would be able to discuss or consult with you. No, that's what I mean, I'm here on the live streams. That's the live stream is like the way of asking me questions if that's what you're really interested in doing. But no, the courses are much better than that. They are, lots of videos from me, and depending on the course, you get reading material and stuff. And that's really where you study it. So you're learning the same, like in the MBA course where you have textbooks, you're learning exactly the same material for a tiny fraction of the cost, and you're getting the same benefit. The only other thing that might be interesting to people is I alluded to in this live stream, networking. If you're going out and you're immersing yourself in an industry, you're reaching out to organizations or individuals, how to do that. This course here does have like how to network, and it's how to network for introverts, where you do networking on demand, where you approach companies that can help you. Now, this is within the context of getting a job, but it's the same principle if you're doing it for, entrepreneurial related research. So if that's of any interest to you, you can take that course and just look at the networking stuff. But these are all resources I created if people want to go any deeper. So check those out if that aligns with any of your goals. And thank you to the 25 people you guys are here. I will be back in an hour with my other live stream called How to Get Hired. So stick around for that if you are interested. Thanks very much and take care. I'll see you guys in a week.